I work for a property preservation company. We handle foreclosed homes, securing them, cleaning them out, winterizing them, sometimes even boarding them up if there's vandalism. It's not glamorous work, but it pays. And for the most part, it's quiet. You spend a lot of time alone in houses that used to belong to people who are gone. Some are sad, some are boring, some feel neutral. Every once in a while, you get one that doesn't feel right. This was one of those. It was 2020. I had been assigned to clear a property in a rural part of upstate New York. You know the type: old, empty, fading fast. Half the businesses in the town were closed. The roads were cracked, overgrown with weeds, and the few neighbors you might see kept their distance. The house itself was off a dirt road, hidden behind overgrown brush and thick woods on three sides. No other homes nearby, just trees and silence. According to the file, the house had been foreclosed after the owner, an elderly woman, passed away. No family had come forward. The utilities had been shut off for over a year. My job was simple: catalog the remaining property, empty it out, and secure the house for winter. I drove up on a Monday morning around 9 a.m. in a small box truck with my gear. From the outside, it looked intact. Windows closed, door locked, roof fine, just a lot of weeds and vines climbing the porch. I shoved the front door open. It had swollen its frame. Inside, everything looked standard: dust, stale air, faded furniture. The kind of place that smelled like the weight of decades pressing against the walls. Then my work phone rang. I froze. I had no signal. I'd already checked. Nothing. And yet it buzzed anyway. Unknown caller. I answered. Silence. Just static. I said hello twice and hung up. Glitch, I assumed. I gotta work. I start every property the same way. Photos. Every room, every object meticulously documented. The living room was cluttered with old furniture. Lace curtains, faded paintings, porcelain figures, doilies, dust thick enough to leave fingerprints when you wiped a corner. The hallway smelled strange. Not moldy, not rotten, just metallic and musty, like something had been scraped across old wood. 3 bedrooms, one stripped bare except a sagging mattress on the floor. One was a sewing room, thread spools everywhere, a dusty sewing machine on the desk. One, the master bedroom. I remember stopping in the master. There was a rotary phone on the nightstand, yellowed with age, long coiled cord, the kind of phone that should never ring again. Then I went to the bathroom. That's what happened. My phone rang again. Unknown caller. I hesitated. I answered. Silence. Then a whisper. Soft. Barely audible. Don't answer the phone in the bedroom. Click. Deadline. I stood frozen. My heart was hammering. I checked every window. All closed. No signs of forced entry. Nobody outside. I told myself it was a prank. Maybe one of the other crew knew I was there first. But no one else had been scheduled to arrive that early. I pushed on. Part of my job required me to clear the basement. The door was in the kitchen, heavy, creaking. I hesitated. The basement smelled like rust and mold. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old paint cans, broken furniture, cobwebs. In the back corner was a small table. On it, a cordless phone covered in dust, gray plastic, clearly in use for years. Next to it, a stack of yellowed notebooks. I picked one up. Each page had a name, a date, and a short sentence. Lena H., July 3rd, 2019. Rang once. Didn't answer. Carl M., September 12th, 2019. Picked up. Warned him. Dozens of entries. All local. All meticulous. I dropped the notebook. Heart in my throat. My gut screaming at me. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. I ran upstairs. Fast. Out of the house. My hand shaking. I didn't finish the job. I drove straight back to the office and filed a partial report. Unsafe property. Possible squatters or interference. I wrote. I didn't tell them about the whisper or the rotary phone. I couldn't. 2 days later, Mark, another crew member, went out to finish the job. He called me, voice shaking. The phone in the bedroom. It rang. And nobody was there. He quit the next day. Without notice. Never came back. Weeks later, I learned some details from the office. Apparently, the homeowner had been obsessed with tracking local deaths. Not a hobby, an obsession. The cork board of obituaries I had seen, It was only one room in a house filled with journals, letters, and notes documenting dates, names, and unusual events. Some entries were innocuous, others cryptic. I realized later that the whisper on the phone, the warning, wasn't random. Someone had planned it. Or something. It got worse. After I left that property, I started noticing odd things at other houses I visited. Phones that weren't plugged in, shadows that weren't mine, sounds that didn't belong. A pattern, subtle, impossible to ignore. I even tried rational explanations, wiring issues, electrical surges, hallucinations from exhaustion. But that doesn't account for the physical traces, the notebooks, the rotary phone ringing, Mark's reaction. I can't explain it, and I don't want to. I do know one thing. You never truly know a house until it tells you its story. And sometimes that story isn't yours to finish. It was spring break in 2022, my second year of college, and I thought we were being smart. 6 of us, me, Matt, Chris, Tyler, and 2 girls, Jess and Sarah, decided to rent a cabin in South Carolina. Just for a few days. No school, no stress, no phones. Just the idea of getting away from everything. We were all close friends since freshman year. This was supposed to be one of those trips that became funny stories years later. You know the type. Loud music, too much drinking, fire pit antics, late-night card games. The cabin itself was cheap for its size. 2 stories, wraparound porch, 2 bathrooms, private land near a lake. GPS gave out about an hour before we arrived. The dirt road narrowed, tree branches scraping the sides of the truck, nothing but forest stretching for miles. When we finally reached it, we went silent. The cabin didn't look like the pictures. Older, dirtier, windows dusty, shutters hanging by one hinge. A faint smell of wet wood and decay hung in the air. We joked about it. Adds character, someone said. I didn't feel reassured. Night 1 started normal. Drinks, music, laughter. By 11 p.m., it got cold, so we moved inside. That's when I noticed the woods outside. Not just nighttime dark, pitch black. The porch light barely illuminated more than a few feet. Trees pressed in, almost tangible in their density. No insects, no wind. Just silence. We fell asleep around 2 a.m. I woke up around 4:15 a.m. At first, I thought someone had nudged me. My eyes snapped open to the faintest tap, tap, tap. I froze. It wasn't mechanical. Not pipes or windows. Fingers. Slow. Gentle. Persistent. I looked toward the window in my room, and there he was. A man pressed against the glass. Pale. Shirtless. Wild hair. Mouth slightly open. Eyes wide. Staring. Just standing there. Tapping. Like he was testing me. My body locked up. I whispered Matt's name. He stirred, groggy. I pointed. He glanced over, saw the man, and his eyes went wide. Coffee table went flying as he jumped up. The figure vanished when the porch light flicked on. The rest of the night passed in tense silence. We blocked doors and windows, taking turns staying awake. By morning, we found bare footprints circling the cabin, every window. Upstairs, downstairs, even a small bathroom window above a shower. We should have left. We didn't. We were young, dumb, stubborn. Night 2 began similarly. Drinks, fire pit, music, but everyone was on edge. Even Tyler, usually a joker, stayed quiet. Chris kept a hunting knife on his belt. Jess didn't drink. Around 3:30 a.m., Matt went to the kitchen for water. He stopped in the hallway. Pointed. I followed his gaze. There he was. The man. Inside. Naked. His back scratched raw, almost bloody. He swayed slightly, rocking on his feet. He didn't move toward us. Didn't speak. Just stood. We froze. I grabbed a pocket knife. Sarah, a fire poker. Chris, a broken chair leg. Matt didn't speak. I flicked the lights on. Nothing. The back door, wide open. No forced entry. Just open. We left. Packed the essentials. Drove through the woods until we had self-service. Called the sheriff. At the diner off the highway, the deputy didn't look surprised. Yeah, we've had trouble with folks squatting in those woods. We tried to explain it wasn't a drunk, lost local. He just nodded. Implication clear. He knew the man. The cabin listing disappeared days later. The owner? Gone. No contact. The next weeks, the image of that man's face haunted me. Eyes unblinking. mouth slightly open. That grin. It was a grin, but not a friendly one. I started having nightmares. Sounds of tapping on windows, footsteps circling the cabin. That same swaying presence. I would wake up in cold sweats, convinced he was there, just standing, watching. Even now, months later, I see him in my dreams. Always the same. Waiting, patient, silent. I've told this story sparingly. Most friends think it's exaggerated, a mix of alcohol and fear. But I know the truth. Some places are alive, not in the way a forest breathes, not in the way a house creaks with age. Places can watch you, and some people or some things choose to follow. You never realize how thin the walls between safety and danger really are until you're standing alone in the dark, listening to someone breathe on the other side of your door. We grow up believing that danger looks obvious, that it announces itself loudly, that if something bad is going to happen, we'll see it coming. But the truth is much worse. Sometimes danger just stands there, watching, waiting, learning your schedule better than you know it yourself. And sometimes, even when you do everything right, even when you call the police, even when you leave, it doesn't stop. The man who came back at 2:14 a.m. This happened in the fall of 2021 when I was living alone in a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. It was the first time in my life I'd ever lived by myself. On paper, I was ready. I was 27 years old, had a full-time job, paid my bills on time, and followed a predictable routine. But emotionally, I was still raw. I'd just gone through a brutal breakup, the kind that leaves you feeling hollow and restless at the same time. I thought living alone might help. Give me space, quiet, time to reset. The townhouse was part of a short row of identical units, all beige vinyl siding and narrow porches, tucked into a sleepy cul-de-sac just off a rural highway. The neighborhood felt sanitized, almost artificial. Trimmed hedges, wind chimes, little garden flags that never moved unless there was wind. Mostly older couples lived there, retirees who waved politely but didn't linger. A few young families. No trouble, no noise, no reason to feel unsafe. At least not at first. I didn't know any of my neighbors well, and I liked it that way. I kept to myself. Went to work, came home, cooked, watched TV, went to bed. Simple. But almost immediately, there was one person who didn't blend in. He lived 3 doors down from me. He was tall and heavy-set, probably mid-40s, with a thick, scruffy beard and a posture that always seemed tense, like he was coiled inward on himself. What stood out wasn't just how he looked, it was what he did. Almost every night when I came home from work, sometime between 9 and 10 p.m., he'd be outside. Sometimes he leaned against his porch railing. Sometimes he stood at the edge of his driveway. Sometimes he just stood there, hands at his sides, facing the street, staring. He never waved, never smiled, never acknowledged me. And it wasn't a casual glance. It was a fixed, unblinking stare, like he wasn't looking at me, but through me. Even if I made eye contact, something I only did once or twice, he didn't react. No nod, no shift, no embarrassment, just stillness. I try to rationalize it. Maybe he had insomnia. Maybe he worked nights. Maybe he was just a smoker who liked fresh air. That's what my friends said when I mentioned it. That's what my mom said too. But something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just that he was there. It was that he never seemed to leave. The noises started in mid-September. I remember the night clearly because I was exhausted. I worked late shifts managing inventory at a distribution center, and I usually didn't get home until around 10:30 p.m. I ate something quick, scrolled on my phone, and fell asleep around midnight. At exactly 2:37 a.m., I woke up. The sound pulled me out of sleep, so suddenly my heart was already racing before I even understood what I was hearing. Metal scraping against wood. Slow, controlled. At first, I thought I dreamed it. Then I heard it again. A long, creaking noise, like an old gate being forced open inch by inch. My bedroom was on the first floor at the back of the unit. I had a sliding glass door with vertical blinds that led to a small, fenced-in backyard. Instead of grass, the entire yard was filled with decorative gravel. Every sound back there carried. I sat up in bed and listened. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate crunching across the rocks. Not an animal. No frantic scurrying. No randomness. These were measured steps. I grabbed my phone and slid out of bed, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't own a gun. I didn't even own anything remotely useful as a weapon. All I had was a dull kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand, something I'd always felt silly about, until that moment. I crouched by the blinds and carefully parted them. Nothing. The motion light wasn't on, which meant whoever it was either hadn't triggered it or knew how to avoid it. That thought alone made my stomach drop. I called 911. The dispatcher was calm. Too calm. She took my address and told me officers were on the way. I stayed crouched in the dark, barely breathing. 10 minutes felt like an hour. Finally, red and blue lights washed across the front of the house. I opened the door and met the officers outside. I told them everything. The sound, the footsteps, the time. One officer checked the backyard while the other stayed with me. When the first officer returned, he said the gate was closed and there were no signs of tampering. No footprints, no damage. He shrugged and said, "Probably just a raccoon." The look on his face told me he didn't believe anything serious had happened. They left. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I went into the backyard myself. That's when I saw it. A flat stone, about the size of a paperback book, wedged carefully under the bottom edge of the wooden gate. The gate had a spring that made it swing shut automatically. The stone stopped it from closing all the way. It was subtle, intentional, something someone would do if they wanted to come back later, quietly. I threw the stone into the yard and called the police again. They added it to the report. Told me again there wasn't much they could do. 2 nights later, at 2:14 a.m., I woke up again. This time to my back door handle turning. Soft at first. Testing. Then harder. Someone was trying to open it. I didn't move. I barely breathed. When a motion light clicked on, I saw his shadow pass across the blinds. A man, not hiding, not rushing, just standing there. The same officers came back. This time, they found footprints in the gravel leading directly to the door. Still no forced entry. Still nothing they could do. I bought cameras the next day. That night, I stayed awake. At 2:23 a.m., the back camera triggered. A man walked in a frame. Tall, broad, black hoodie, gloves. He walked straight to the door, looked up into the camera, and smiled. A slow, stretched grin. Then he backed away and vanished. When I came back the next day, there were muddy handprints on the glass. 4 of them, like someone had been standing there for a long time. Watching. I moved out a week later. The note in my mailbox read, "The cops leave, but I don't." A month later, the new tenant messaged me. She was hearing footsteps too, always around 2 a.m.